It happened at a family party, of all places, my mother's birthday. Everyone was gathered around the table at her favorite Korean barbecue spot just outside Chicago. It was loud, full of laughter, and the smell of grilled bulgogi filled the air. My brother was passing out slices of cake, the kind with the thick buttercream frosting she liked. I was quiet, like always, just trying to blend in. When the gifts came out and he handed her a $400 silk scarf from Saks, something cracked. I asked softly why he always got praised for doing the bare minimum, while I, the one who helped her refinance her mortgage last year, got forgotten again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call anyone names. I just asked. My mother turned to me and slapped me across the face, right there in front of the cousins, the neighbors, and her friends from church. I didn't say a word. My cheek stung, but the silence stung worse. No one stood up for me. Not my father, who just stared at his drink. Not my brother, who smiled and kept eating like nothing happened. I sat there, frozen for a moment, trying to decide if I was going to cry or scream, but I did neither. I picked up my coat, walked out the front door, and drove straight back to my apartment in Lakeview. That was the night I stopped pretending. The moment I realized I had spent 32 years trying to be good, trying to be quiet, trying to be small, and all it got me was a red cheek and an empty chair. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to stay invisible anymore. I should have seen it earlier. The signs were always there, not in big dramatic gestures, but in the quiet, routine choices my family made over and over. I turned 18 and got a $25 Target gift card taped inside a folded piece of printer paper. No cake, no dinner. Just a half smile from my mom and a shrug from my dad. That same year, they threw my younger brother a weekend party at Wisconsin Dells. 2 nights in a resort suite. Cake from a custom bakery. Family portraits in matching shirts. He was 15 at the time. I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe they had more money that year, or maybe I just didn't ask for enough. I'd already started to bend into the shape they needed. The quiet one. The one who didn't make things hard. I enrolled at UIC with a partial scholarship and picked up a campus library job right away. When that wasn't enough, I added late-night shifts at a 24-hour diner off Halstead, pouring coffee for third-shift truckers until 3 a.m. Every month was a math problem. Rent in my shared apartment was $900. Books averaged $150 per course, and groceries were whatever I could carry on the red line. Meanwhile, my brother got into engineering at UIUC. They paid for everything: tuition, housing, and meal plan. $40,000 a year. He wanted a newer car in his sophomore year, and they wired him $6,000 that same weekend. That was the weekend I asked for help covering my last 2 months of rent. Just $2,500. They said they were tapped out. I didn't push. I thanked them anyway. I spent the rest of that semester couch surfing, splitting meals with roommates, walking to class in shoes that had lost their soles. I graduated on time, but I never walked at commencement. No one was coming anyway. My brother? Full ceremony. Floral leis. A catered dinner with family friends afterward. I helped clean up. When I moved to Chicago for my first job, I picked a studio apartment in Lakeview East. Rent was $1,450, heat not included. I budgeted $40 for gas and $80 for groceries. Every receipt lived in a spreadsheet. When the fridge broke, I fixed it myself with YouTube and a butter knife. My brother lived in a 1-bedroom in Madison, fully paid. Utilities included. His biggest complaint was that the parking garage was too far from the elevator. I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that they just saw him as needing more, that maybe they believed I could handle anything. And I could. But the truth is, I stopped believing I was worth asking for more. That's what long-term favoritism does. It teaches you not to expect a seat at the table. It tells you to bring your own chair, and even then, not to take up too much space. I built a life out of scraps. I taught myself how to negotiate a salary, how to file taxes alone, how to avoid payday loans. I once bought a winter coat with coins I rolled by hand. I clipped coupons when he was buying concert tickets. I was reading financial blogs while he was asking for a drone for Christmas. They gave him the drone. I got a scarf. No tag. Probably from a clearance bin. But none of it made me bitter. It just made me quiet, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. When your whole value is measured in how little you need, you learn to shrink. But that kind of shrinking doesn't stay small forever. One day, it starts pushing back. And in my case, it pushed all the way through the surface, all the way to that slap. That night, I couldn't sleep. My cheek still ached where her hand landed, but what hurt more was how normal it all felt. I poured a glass of red wine, sat on my couch, and opened my laptop. I created a blog through an old Gmail I hadn't touched in years. I named it Hidden Balances, a nod to both emotional debt and the bank accounts they never let me forget were empty. I didn't plan what I was going to write. I just started typing. The slap, the silence, the way no one flinched when it happened. I wrote about birthdays, scholarships, broken refrigerators, and the look on my mother's face when she told me I was too independent to need help. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was a ledger of facts, a story told in missing receipts and quiet dismissals. I hit publish at 1:23 a.m. I didn't share it anywhere, not at first. But something in me knew the truth was out now, and I wasn't going to take it back. By morning, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Someone had found it and posted it in a Chicago subreddit. From there, it spread to a few local Facebook groups and even LinkedIn. I had 8,000 views by breakfast, 100 comments. Strangers saying they saw themselves in every line. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had written myself into the light. The calls started before noon. My mother left a voicemail asking me to take the post down. My father texted something vague about keeping family matters private. Neither of them apologized. They were worried about what people would think, not about what had been true for years. I could hear the panic under their words, like they were scrambling to rewrite a story that wasn't theirs to tell anymore. But while they spun, other voices started to rise. A co-worker slipped me a note during our lunch break that just said, "Thank you." A neighbor I barely knew commented under the blog that she had grown up the same way. A woman from my building knocked on my door to say she'd shared it with her book club. The people who knew how it felt to be invisible weren't asking me to stay quiet. They were standing beside me. At first, I didn't know what to do with the support. I had gotten so used to being overlooked that recognition felt unfamiliar, almost dangerous. But every time I opened my inbox or read a comment, something in me steadied. I wasn't alone. Not in what I lived through. Not in what I was becoming. For years, I had believed that silence was strength, that enduring quietly made me noble, but it didn't. It made me disappear. Speaking the truth didn't make me weaker. It made me real. And for the first time, I could feel myself existing outside their shadow. It started with a voicemail from my mother. Her tone was clipped, almost businesslike. She said their mortgage was becoming unmanageable and asked if I could help, just until things stabilized. I didn't respond right away. An hour later, my brother texted, calling me selfish. The family steps up when it matters. Said I was acting like I owed them nothing. So I opened my budget spreadsheet. My take-home pay was $6,200 a month. My rent came to $2,000. Student loans took $460. Groceries, utilities, car insurance, everything else added up quickly. I had just under $3,000 in savings. That wasn't security. That was one emergency away from panic. Every dollar I had came from saying no to myself for years. No vacations. No splurges. No margin for error. I had done it all without their help, and now they wanted me to patch the very roof that had never sheltered me. I sat with it for a long time. Not out of guilt, but because part of me still hoped they'd ask how I was doing. They didn't. So I replied, I can't help. I'm taking care of myself now. It wasn't cruel. It was overdue. For the first time, I believed it. I owed them nothing. I signed up for a painting class on a whim. It met on Tuesday nights at a small studio near the lake, the kind of place with chipped hardwood floors and mismatched easels. My first canvas was a mess of tangled reds and heavy black lines. I didn't plan it. I just let my hand move. When I stepped back, it looked like everything I had never said, smeared in acrylic. The instructor came by and paused longer than I expected. She said there was something raw in the way I used space. I didn't know what that meant, but it stayed with me. Each week, I came back. I stopped trying to make anything pretty. I started painting how things felt. I saw parts of myself in every layer, every uneven brushstroke. The chaos finally had somewhere to live that wasn't just under my skin. At the same time, I started therapy. Once a week, in a quiet office near my job, I sat across from someone who didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss, didn't try to fix me. My therapist told me forgiveness wasn't a moral requirement. She said healing didn't need anyone else's approval. I'd never heard that before. That's when it clicked. I didn't owe them silence. I didn't owe them softness. I didn't owe them my voice, my time, or my story. For the first time, I felt like I had space inside me that wasn't occupied by shame. I had spent so long shrinking. Now I was starting to take up room. They said it was a dinner to clear the air, a chance to reset. It was at an Italian place in Naperville, one of those family-style spots with dim lighting and framed photos on the walls. I wore a black blouse and brought a manila folder with everything they told me to forget. Bank statements, birthday photos, printed emails. I didn't plan to make a scene. I just wasn't going to play along anymore. The table was full. My aunts, uncles, and cousins. My father poured wine like nothing had happened. My brother scrolled through his phone. My mother sat across from me, too cheerful, too rehearsed. When the appetizers came, she smiled and said she hoped we could move forward. I said I agreed. Then I opened the folder and slid it across the table. I started with the rent denial, the email where they said funds were too tight, then the bank transfer that same week to my brother's car account. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just read. Birthday dates, dollar amounts, tuition letters. I laid them out like a lawyer. I let the numbers speak. The room fell quiet. No one reached for the breadbasket. My cousin stared at his plate. My uncle cleared his throat, then stopped. My brother shifted in his seat. My mother blinked like she didn't recognize me. That's when I knew. I didn't need their apology. I needed this moment. The truth finally had a seat at the table. When the check came, I went to pay for my meal. A relative I barely speak to had already covered it, just nodded at me once. No words. That said more than anything else that night. I walked out lighter, not because they changed, but because I finally had. I went home that night and sat on my couch with the folder still in my bag. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the dinner. I just breathed. The kind of breath that comes when the noise finally stops. I opened my laptop and clicked into my blog. The draft sat there, waiting. I added one final sentence. You do not need to carry silence to prove your strength. Then I hit publish. Within 24 hours, the post had over 30,000 views. By the second day, it crossed 50,000. Strangers left comments that felt like small windows opening. Some said they'd never had the courage to speak. Others said they felt like they had finally been seen. I didn't reply to every message, but I read them all. It didn't feel like exposure anymore. It felt like a release. A week later, I got an email from a small gallery in Logan Square. One of the staff had seen my work in a community art class showcase. They wanted to feature 3 of my pieces in their next exhibit. I stared at the email for a long time before responding. Yes, the word felt simple. Clean. Mine. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even closure. It was the first time my life stopped revolving around pain. I was building something, not because of them, not to prove anything, just because I could, and maybe that's the quiet victory no one prepares you for. Not being right, just being free. The apartment isn't huge, but it's mine. Top floor, a little balcony that catches the light in the morning. I paid the deposit myself. Every dollar came from staying late, saying no to what drained me, and finally accepting that survival was never supposed to be the goal. The raise helped. So did the clarity. My family still calls sometimes. The voicemails aren't angry anymore. Just quiet. I don't return them. Not because I'm bitter. Just because I'm done. I don't flinch when their names light up my screen. That part of me doesn't ache anymore. I sit at my window some nights and watch the skyline settle. For the first time, peace doesn't feel like something I have to earn. It just is. I ended the blog with a question. When did you realize you deserved better? I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted someone else to see themselves the way I finally see myself. Not broken, not angry, just free. If you've ever had to walk away from people who taught you to doubt your worth, I hope you'll share your story. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Sometimes strength sounds like silence, and sometimes it looks like walking away.